sure we can all relate. I've experienced times when I've questioned really deep things like, does God exist? Does he really exist? Because I've grown up in a Christian home and I've grown up believing that he exists, but we get to the point where we have to question that and really know for ourselves that that's what we believe. And why we believe that he's there and how we believe that he's there. When I've come to these points in my life, I've looked back at my past experience and I can see times where God is there. I can see times where I know that could only been his hand that was leading and directing in my life. And a couple of these times when I knew I was really close to God, or I could feel that he was really close to me, were when I was baptized. I was baptized when I was 8 years old, and that might seem a little bit young, but when I was 8, I had a real connection with God, or he had a real connection with me. I trusted him, and I knew that he was there for me, and it was simple as that. I didn't have a care in the world. I knew that God was there for me, and I wasn't worried about the future or anything like that. But a couple years after that, I was 10 or so, and I was just not really having that connection with God as much. And I was still a kid, but I remember praying this prayer that God would just make something really big happen to me. Like, I don't know what, that I would get like almost killed or something in a car accident, or get really sick, or somehow know that he was really there. And it wasn't long before that prayer was allowed to be answered. I don't know that God specifically made anything happen to me, but he allowed it to happen to me for a reason. And so a couple years later, it was on a trip to Africa that we were going to go to Togo, which is a small country in West Africa. It's right next to Ghana, and so we flew to Ghana and then drove into Togo. And it was a share-hymn trip, so my brother and my sister were going to be preaching each a series, and my mom and my dad were going to kind of be there and help them. I wanted to preach, but I never got the opportunity because 2 weeks into the trip, we went on an excursion to the mountains, and at the time, Togo was not politically really stable. It wasn't a really stable country, so we kind of all had to be careful about what we were doing and stick together, and we were in the city, and it wasn't a real safe place. But in the mountains, we had to stick together, and on the way there, I just got this wave of I just all of a sudden felt like a truck had run over me. And I didn't know what was happening, but they took my temperature, and come to find out I had a fever of 102, just like that. And so they gave me some Tylenol, but I had to still go on the trip with them because we were going to go on a hike. It was really hot, really the most miserable hike of my entire life. I felt awful. And it kind of it got better as the day went on. We got back to the hotel. And the next couple days, I kind of got better, and then I'd get really, really worse again. And so a couple days later, we were at the market, and another wave hit me, and I could not stand up anymore. I had no energy. I was just losing it. I was starting to, my mind was getting foggy, and so they took me to a clinic where an English-trained doctor had his practice, thankfully, and come to find out I had malaria, falciparum malaria, which is the worst kind of malaria that you can get, and the #1 cause of death in a lot of African countries. So this is what I had, and on top of that, I had intestinal amoeba, which that itself can kill you too. So I was basically fighting these two extreme diseases, and they gave me IV quinine, that can kill you too. You can have a lot of effects to it. There's a lot of bad effects. You can go blind, deaf. And so basically the next couple days, I waffled in and out of consciousness. And a lot of people were praying for me. My parents were praying for me. I knew I was dying, but I wasn't really worried about that. I wanted to die because I didn't want to live like that anymore. But God brought me through this experience. And now I look back and I know that God was there. And there's no reason I should be here except for the fact that God was there and God saved my life for a reason. And I've learned that things don't just happen by chance. And there's a lot of people that you can either believe that God is there or that he's not. But one thing I've thought about when I've thought about, is God there or not, is that what I believe doesn't change whether he's there or not. If what I believe changed something about him, then he wouldn't be God. I would be God because I can change stuff like that. But I can't. I'm dependent on somebody else besides myself. I can't make myself blink. I can't make the waves crash on the ocean shore. I can't make all these things happen. I can't make a heartbeat. And so this is what I've been thinking about God. And then to look back and see how God was there through that experience, and also realize that I'm totally dependent on him, then that's kind of changed my perspective on life. And the biggest thing more recently as I've gotten older and my relationship with God has matured is that I've realized that there's somebody that loves me so much and that has done so much for me, that he gave himself for me. And I've fallen in love with that God. It's because when somebody dies for you and takes your place, that really changes your perspective on life. And that's what's given me a reason to live.